Namaste.
Hi, welcome to the Shaman The Mermaid, and this is our second report in a row that we are on the water. It's
Yes.
pretty exciting.
And different water this time. We're much more north than where we were in San Diego. We're clear up in the San Juan Islands, Whidbey Island to be exact, off the coast of Washington. And we're hoping to have a little whale friend pop up in the video, but that might be asking a lot. It's only the beginning of March, and so that means their migration just starts now. But there is a good chance for eagle to fly by because father and son are fishing here back and forth, and they have two trees on either side of us behind us. So if you're bored with the report, just watch for the eagles and the whales.
It's the nature report.
That'll be really interesting for you. But I think we have a good one because there's a lot of changes in this particular astrology report, starting with the Virgo full moon on March 7th, all the way to the Aries full moon on April 5th. So a lot of change. We're crossing into the beginning from the end of the astrological chart. So that's one of the changes. And I think, how many planets did you say are changing signs this time?
6 planets and luminaries are changing signs, and 1 is changing twice, so 7 changes.
And one of those changes is a big one, and we've been talking about it a long time. Pluto is going to move into Aquarius for the first of a few dips back and forth. Is it the first?
It's the first of 3.
So we'll break that down a little bit, but that is a big one. That's a really big one. We'll come around to it in just a moment. But the report kicks off on the full moon per usual, and that is the Virgo full moon, as I mentioned. Here's our little cheat sheets blowing in the wind. And on that same day, March 7th, Saturn, the first of the planets moving into a new sign, Saturn's going to move into Pisces. That's also pretty darn huge. Maybe the second biggest influential luminary, as you put, he always uses good words, to move into a new sign. Speak to Saturn moving into Pisces.
Well, it kicks off with the Virgo full moon. So whenever the moon is full, the sun is opposite. So the sun is in Pisces, and then Saturn is moving into Pisces. So really the full moon is opposite Sun and Saturn. And this is the first time that Saturn has been in the sign of Pisces since the early 90s, since 1993 to 95 or 96, about that time. Saturn has a 30-year cycle. So it's revisiting things that happened back in the 90s. And Saturn in Pisces, I don't want to say it's Saturn's least favorite sign, but it might be one of its most productive ones in terms of spiritual growth. Saturn wants to keep things consistent. It wants to keep them in form and structure. It wants to put boundaries and also show us, what we're capable of. Pisces wants to break boundaries, move beyond, get beyond time and space, and step into the mystical unexpected. And so these two seemingly contrary energies are arising. And so Saturn is not just moving in there for a day or a month. Saturn is going to be there from 2023 all the way through 2026. So this is a 2.5-year cycle. And last time that Saturn was there, lots of interesting things happened. That was when the apartheid fell in South Africa. Nelson Mandela became president. It's also when the Rwanda genocides happened and 800,000 people were slaughtered. It's when the Bosnia-Herzegovina wars came out. It's when email started, and it's when the internet began. So it's not whether this is good or bad, but whatever it is, Pisces is things that affect the entire cosmic whole. So something will come down the pike that during these next 2.5 years that will likely shift the whole world consciousness. Some of it may seem positive and harmonious, and some of it may seem challenging, but whatever it is, it's trying to lift all of us to change so that we come into alignment with spirit, which I think brings us to our theme.
Right. So since we have all the change coming up, we decided to work with that. And we said flow with the changes or be changed by the flow.
And I think it's appropriate that it's the Virgo full moon that kicks this off because we were talking about it. There's a couple ways to change. One is slow and steady and doing a little bit every day or doing consistent like a sadhana. And the other way is not doing anything and letting the energy build up and then wham. And so I think the Virgo full moon is guiding not only at this time, but in these unfolding changes throughout this report in the coming years is to consistently stay on top of your spiritual work and the things that you need to do. And the changes will be more like a spiral up than a explosion out.
Yeah, because sometimes if we're resisting change and then we're forced into it, it feels like a slap across the face. It can be humiliating. It can be a radical trauma that occurs because we've been resistant. So the old rabbit and the turtle kind of thing, slow and steady wins the race because, folks, change is inevitable. And we know that. We hear all the old cliches statements like the only constant is change, and change is the only thing that's the steady. But we resist it nonetheless. We don't like change. It puts us in our uncomfortable place oftentimes. And what we're facing right now is big change, not just this month with planets moving into new signs. That's kind of a kickoff or a flavor teaser for us. But really, our evolutionary progression as a species, the human species, is in radical change. Sometimes it's a little bit gentler and softer, but we're in radical shift and change. And so being able to be flexible and mutable and malleable is a really big bonus for us if we can step into that kind of groove. Otherwise, we're going to be forced on down the river regardless. It's going to change. And you've already started to see some things shifting and going away or changing, and some things we like and some things we don't like. Doesn't matter. It's going to happen. And so allowing ourselves that ease and grace to just kind of flow, be like water as opposed to the fixed earth or the steady of the, I don't want to say don't be like the trees. Be like the trees. They are steady and flexible at the same time, but not so fixed and staunch in our ways that we end up getting trampled over by a bulldozer, because the harder we fall, the more difficult we make it to move us, the bigger the machinery is that comes in and takes us down. If we're easy, it's just a gentle river that flows us. If we're stubborn like a bull, they get a bulldozer and take us down. So it's best to just be flexible. And there's lots of ways. Michael mentioned the slow and steady sadhana. That's a way for us to move with change. And what's sadhana? Maybe you ask. Sadhana is your spiritual practice, and having a daily spiritual practice, and that can even flow. It doesn't have to be routine, although a little routine is good. But something where you sit in meditation or quiet contemplation or review your values, reflection on where you're at in your emotional body, allowing the physical body to have movement and then quiet all at the same time. This is all part of your spiritual practice that you can put into motion. And then that just tunes you in to the cosmic flow or the ritam, and it allows for you to tune in to what the natural world is saying to us at this time. And that's the guidance. And Michael mentioned Saturn and Pisces, and Saturn is law and order, and Pisces doesn't like that at all. It wants no boundaries, no limitations. And so when those two come together, what I determine, it kind of looks like a spiritual law or the natural order of things. You know, like spring comes in a few days, and then summer comes in June, and then fall comes in September. But it's not on an exact day. There's a little bit of flow between, we have a calendar date, but it might be snowing on March 20th, and it might be raining on June 22nd, and it might be beautifully warm on the fall equinox. But those are the days that we look to change, and there is this constant spiral or evolution of things, and just kind of being with it day by day, being present day by day.
Now is the time.
Now is the time, right? So that is all kicking off the very first day of this report, March 7th. We'll try to move a little faster here. But that big shift of Pisces, or Saturn moving into Pisces, is pretty predominant for this month. And then what happens?
The next day we have Jupiter coming in conjunction with Chiron in the sign of Aries. And this kind of points to some of the things that need to change. Not some, but majorly. Chiron is our wounds and our healing abilities. And so whatever Jupiter transits or comes into conjunction with is amplifying, magnifying, bringing to the forward consciousness, helping us see it. And it's also pointing to, this is our quest. This is what we need to go forward with and seek. And so we need to seek out what we need to heal and become healers and turn around and share that with others. All of this being in the sign of Aries is around the yang, masculine, solar, outward moving energy. And one of my favorite descriptions of what the masculine is came from our teacher Kaipacha from this list. And the first word he used was open-hearted. Not always the first word that we might use in modern times, but the purpose of the masculine and the feminine is both to be open-hearted. They approach it slightly differently. But so when there's a wound there, we're trying to come back to opening up our hearts. The opposite of the masculine shutdown is defensive, projecting, angry, hiding away, going to war, fighting, aggression, passive aggressive. So those are all negative. Or being impotent and in fantasy and lost and not having willpower and not knowing I don't know what to do. And so this is saying, you know what to do. Get in there, step up, find your power. And Jupiter is saying this is the quest for everybody. Is there something you want to say?
I think I'm a little bit, we were talking before the report, and I'm a little bit trepidatious about Jupiter next to Chiron, because as he said, Jupiter will magnify anything that it comes up to. Chiron, if your wound is healed, if you've been doing the work, your shadow work, you've done a lot of traversing of the landscape of your being, then Jupiter coming into the healed side of things magnifies that, and that's great. There's nothing more powerful than somebody who's healed their wounds and is walking around helping others do the same. It's very Buddha or Jesus-like, and it's charismatic, and we're drawn to it. So there's potential for that. My concern is for those who have not healed their wounds, which I think is a lion's share of people, and Jupiter saddling up to it magnifies the fact that they have a lot of work to do, and that can bring on a lot of insecurity, a lot of frustration. It can even do, as Michael mentioned, a lot of projecting out. So I see potential volatile behavior when Jupiter conjuncts Chiron, where we get big about our wounds. We're like, well, screw you. You don't even know my pain, that kind of stuff. And so just be aware, this is March 11th, that if there's work to do, that maybe this is not the day to blow up. Instead, it's a day to take advantage and let the magnifying glass be an inward look at some of the things we have to do.
This is also a theme, by the way. This Chiron conjunction will be the clock for the report as well.
Yeah, it comes around again at the end.
March 14th, we have Mars square Neptune. There's a lot of activation of Pisces energy this report. Mars is in Gemini and just coming out of its shadow after a long retrograde in Gemini, and it's squaring Neptune, that spiritual energy. What do you have on that one?
Well, I feel like it's, again, kind of the fist to the aspirant who's trying to be a do-gooder in life, to love everybody. The Neptunian energy and the positive side is really efforting to bring harmony and peace and flow into the world. And if it's being squared by Mars and Gemini, I was like, well, what are you doing about it? How are you doing it? You're a fake, you're a imposter syndrome, all the things, you're virtue signaling. And there can be contention around that, a defensiveness from others towards those who are trying to do good. And I would say hold steady on that, even though the theme is to flow with the changes, just kind of move around that without getting caught in the broil of it. You don't need to get drawn into somebody's darkness because they're jealous or insecure about themselves, but the potential's there for that.
I think the positive side of Mars is knowing the difference between you and somebody else.
Right.
It's like you don't accept somebody else's stuff and you don't project on them. And so if there is chaos or turmoil or challenge,
Yeah.
you can stay centered and not be thrown asunder left and right by it. It's like the
Yeah.
captain of a boat who's going down a river that's changing, but you are staying steady and being like left, right, left.
And not taking on somebody else's junk.
Right after that, we have Sun conjoining Neptune. This happens once a year. The Sun conjoins every outer planet once a year. And more Neptune Pisces energy.
And the sun is our outward expression of ourselves. So, how we show up, what other people see, it's our confidence, it's our energy, and it's with Neptune. So, again, this is like be that bigger person that wants to breed harmony and loving kindness and generosity in the world. And sometimes I think we almost feel like we can't bring it up. Like, oh, you're one of those types that's love everybody, love and light, are you? And I get that a lot in my own family, that they just kind of eyeball roll at me trying to be a do-gooder in the world. But if that's who you are and that's how you feel, this is the time to magnify it. Again, though, there's always shadow side. So Neptune or / Piscean energy also has big potential for being a little bit lost in the sea of love or bliss or ecstasy or alcohol or whatever vices we might have. So we can get a little delusional or numbed out too. And this is important with the sun conjuncting it, that we show up in our highest way and not show up in our drunken sailor way.
Very good. On the next day, March 16th, it is packed with aspects, with energy. I have to look at the paper because there's so many. We have Mercury conjunct Neptune. Mercury's traveling with the Sun. Sun square Mars. Venus square Pluto. Venus moves into Taurus.
Yes.
And Mercury square Mars.
A lot of squares.
So there is a ton of energy happening this day. All of the personal planets are moving and coming into a square or a conjunction. What to say about this day? I think it's kind of par for this time of year and this year. Things are shifting and moving. The squares are when things shift, they come into a blockage or a dynamic interaction, and something needs to change for the energy to flow. That's how you can think of a square. And so Sun square Mars is our personal self is coming against our masculine yang self. Venus square Pluto is our personal values are encountering the soul. Mercury square Mars is our mind, and our thoughts and our perceptions are also coming into the masculine energy. And all of this is with Mercury and Neptune is like what we think and perceive, is that the true spiritual reality. I think the grounding thing here is to go back to that Virgo full moon. Stay to your spiritual practices. Do your sadhana. Keep grounded into the little things that keep you steady and flowing, and use those as your anchor through here. These changes aren't bad, but they're all calling forth that something is going or needs to change.
Something about Virgo too is they're known for, or the energy of Virgo is discernment, choices, and choices create changes. Like if you go left, you're going to go over to this town. If you go right, you're going to go over to this town. So your choices are informing how you navigate the changes. And Virgo full moon is saying use discernment, choose wisely. Let your intuition guide you too on that. It doesn't have to be a logical, pragmatical, well researched, analyzed choice. It's like, what does your heart tell you to do? And then follow that, and that will help you stay in the flow. To me, with all those squares that he pointed out, that shows a resistance to change. I'm squaring off. I'm digging in my heels. I'm not wanting to move. I want to be these hard cornered crevices in life. And so remember the mantra, flow with the changes or be changed by the flow. So if you dig in your heels, you're still going to be carried down, but you're going to be rigidly going down the river. Wouldn't it be so much more fun to be like the swan or the duck or the dolphin and just kind of move through it than the big tugboat barge that's like being dragged across the water?
Jeez.
I know. So the squares are saying, look at these resistances that you might have and see where you can soften them, round the edges a little bit.
You were concerned by this next one, Sun conjunct Mercury on March 17th.
Right. Because that is St. Patrick's Day, and the sun is our outward expression of ourselves, and Mercury is communication. And I see a lot of drunk skunks just hollering off, especially since we've just come off that big Jupiter conjoin Chiron, where we had a big look at our wounds. And so now we're drunk as heck, and we're at the St. Patty's Day parade, and we're like, and another thing, you son of a gun. And so, like, watch out for the big mouth on Sun conjoin Mercury on St. Patty's Day. Maybe that would be a better time to get that cooking in the kitchen, little sauerkraut, potatoes, a little quiet time, and focus in on a nice, wholesome dinner rather than the St. Patty's Day parade. I mean, I know I'm showcasing a lot of debauchery that has the potential there, but let's face it, St. Patty's Day is one of the most debaucherous holidays, right up there with Mardi Gras and, I don't know, maybe Halloween, but people just take permission to go get stupid. And it's not a good day for that with the sun conjunct Mercury. So just watch your mouth, watch your communication a little bit.
And following that, we have movement into Aries in the start of spring. First, Mercury goes before the sun on March 18th and goes into the sign of Aries. And then spring equinox is March 20th when the sun begins the astrological month of Aries.
New beginnings. Literally for the astrological wheel, we start in Aries, fresh start. It's kind of the new year for astrology. We begin fresh. But it's also when we start to see the little crocus and the tulips and the daffodils and the baby squirrels coming out all around. And it's lively and fresh, and there is so much change there. And sometimes we're like, spring cleaning, I don't want to, just go with it. Flow with the changes or be changed by the flow. It's time for change at this big seasonal mark.
And just after that, then we have the Aries new moon. So the moon is in Aries, lots of Aries energy. So that, again, it's a fresh start, and that's a time to tune in. When the moon is new, it's pointing inward. Look inside at your heart, look inside at your mind, look inside at your dharma. So doing spiritual practices like some ceremony or intention setting or quiet gathering with others and taking reflection of where you want to go. It's not only for just the new moon cycle, but it's also for the season that's coming up. And we can also place it in context of like this Saturn in Pisces, and in a moment, Pluto and Aquarius. How do we want to, the moon is our inner world, how do we want to show up in our inner selves first as all of these changes are happening? Because that will point to how we show up in the outer world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very key. And he mentioned earlier a list of the positive attributes of Mars, which you could just slip on over and say those are the same positive attributes of Aries, that open-heartedness, wanting to be in your most valiant way, full of integrity and inspiration and taking charge of your life in a very wholesome and healthy way. So that new moon is saying, hey, let's do that. And then the very next day, Pluto moves into Aquarius, which is the big day. This is what we've been talking about for so long. It's been how many years?
Well, it's been since the 1770s since Pluto was last in Aquarius, and Pluto hasn't changed a sign.
1770s.
1770s.
That's a long time.
What were you doing back then? It's a past life. You'll have to tune into that. It's a huge cycle shift. You know, Pluto comes into a sign once every 248 years. So this is also pointing to shifts in society and shifts in rhythms of culture and shifts around the world. And Pluto is going to go in and out of Capricorn and Aquarius 3 times before it settles in. So this first ingress is 2 months. Goes in March, April, May, and then slips back into Capricorn for June. Then at the end of the year, it'll go back into Aquarius. We won't go through all of it, and then back into Capricorn. And then it won't be till November 2024 that Pluto finally stays in Aquarius until 2044. 20 years.
That's a long time.
So one of the things, and I'm sure you'd like to talk about this as well, this, I think, is a big heralding of the shift to the ages of, as well, the age of Aquarius, which is a 2100-year cycle or 2160-year cycle. But it won't feel quite like the shift as we go in and out. It's like the tides are going back and forth, and some of it is saying you still have things to learn about Capricorn, you still need to have responsibility and duty, you still have karma, you still need to stay to it. And then Aquarius is like, look at the new vision, here's where we're going, here's possibilities. And then you got to take care of your business and still work things out and do it.
Yeah, this is probably singularly the biggest change that we're coming into that's going to affect us as a collective. And it's subtle and won't be like, oh my gosh, it's, March 23rd. I can feel it. It's already moving into that. We're already feeling it, but it's just going to get deeper and bigger. And this is why, the main reason why we said, flow with the changes or be changed by the flow, because this movement is making things happen. It's time for that collective shift. So little people, when they're born under the sign of whatever Pluto's in, so now babies are going to start to be born in Pluto Aquarius. This is a whole new generation. Like, for example, I'm a Pluto Virgo, so anyone born
1957 to 1970
is a Pluto Virgo, and he's a Pluto Libra, so anyone born
1970 to 1984.
And then, like my mom's a Pluto Leo. She was born, the Boomers are the Pluto Leos. The Gen Xers are the Pluto Virgos. What's your generation even called? They kind of didn't get a name. And then, the Gen Zs are mostly the Pluto Sag, but some Pluto Scorpios, but they're generations. So the babies that are going to be born while Pluto's in Aquarius, these little tykes are going to know things coming out of the womb that, they're going to tell mom and dad what to do from day one. And you thought the last generation, the Pluto Capricorns, had that? They ain't nothing compared to what the Pluto Aquarius little ones are going to have. And they're going to have visions for a greater community of living. They're going to have ways that we can collectively vibe all together with nature too. There's all kinds of room for growth there because of them. They're also going to be caught up in technology. That's a big one with the Aquarian age. So we have to kind of monitor how much we're consuming technology, keep it in moderation. Like the whole AI thing that's going around right now, and everybody making their little, selfies of who they are in artificial intelligence. And there's a fine line with that for me anyway. Like, I don't know how much I want to be scanned by a camera to take in my whole genetic profile so that an artificial version of myself can be replicated. So I'm still on this side of the fence with that one. But, I'm changing with the flow. Maybe one day you'll see a big AI photo of me somewhere. But, I'm watching it. That's part of what this is all about, is be open, not rigid. You don't have to say yes to everything, but kind of entertain some things. Don't jump fast, move kind of slow. Slow and steady wins the race. But know that things are flowing. The river is flowing down to the sea, as the song goes.
The one little thing I'll tag to the Aquarius piece is the shift into Pluto and Aquarius and the greater age shift of this 2,000-year shift that we're in. There's no guarantee that the age of Aquarius will be harmonious. It's all coming down to free will choice by every individual as to whether they will stick to their sadhana, they'll do their soul purpose, they'll tune into spiritual law or not. And the medicine for Aquarian age, if it is getting wayward and unbalanced, is Leo, which is open-hearted, human being, hugging, connection, creativity coming from within intuitively, and the cycles of just being a bright light. And so all of this other side of technology, it's not bad or good, but if it's going wayward the way that technology could, you need the Leo piece, which is be a human being.
With a big heart.
With a big heart like a lion and not afraid.
Using our own creativity, Leo energy. So what he's referring to is the opposite side of the wheel is always the medicine, no matter what. So Pluto in Aquarius, if we get out of whack, we start becoming all robotic and stuff, we need to look to the opposite energy, which is Leo energy, and stay in our human form, the animalistic side of ourselves a little bit. And Leo is also that creativity. And to me, along with sadhana, a really great way to stay in the flow of life is to keep your creative energies flowing. You're a divine being of light consciousness. I mean, that's like a little demigod. And look what you can create. I mean, you're an aspect of this whole beautiful world, and this has been created. There's a part of you that has that creative potential, the same divine intelligence that's making these trees do their tree thing, which these trees are amazing. That same divine intelligence is going through you, helping you do your human thing. That's so unique to you. There's nothing else like it. And so when you say to yourself, well, I'm not creative, I don't paint, I don't sing, I don't dance, well, you do something creative. You have an imagination, you have beautiful thoughts that come through you. Maybe the way you make your food, maybe the way you decorate your home, maybe the way you plant your garden. But whatever it is, let the creative energy move through you, and then you stay in the ritam. That's the cosmic flow of things. You stay in creative force, creative energy, creative creation. You stay in creation when you're creative. And, life is for the living. That's part of how we live. It's not eat, pray, die, or, eat 401k, die. That seems to be what we're gearing for in our society. And to me, it's to take in this glorious life and find our potential and reach it, and then turn around and share it back as a gift. And we all have that. Jaima. Okay, well, we can cruise through the rest of these. Mars is going to move into Cancer, so another one of those planets moving into a new sign. I like Mars in Cancer because it kind of dampens the flames a little bit, makes it a little steamy instead of so hot-headed. I mean, everybody likes a nice soak. Even the great warriors need to soak their bones. So Mars in Cancer on March 25th. Mercury next to Chiron, which I was a little worried about this one, just as I was concerned about Jupiter next to Chiron, and, putting the big magnifying glass on our wounds. Now Mercury next to Chiron is like, let's talk about it. But I'm hoping that from the beginning of the month to the end of the month, we've had enough time to really, work on how we're going to communicate some of these darker places within ourselves, and also maybe how we can turn our healing into medicine for somebody else and communicate that outward as well. So there's potential for that. That's March 26th. Then Mercury conjunct Jupiter. Why don't you get that one on March 27th?
I think that was kind of fun.
Ah,
Jupiter is the teacher, the guru, the big learnings, the mystery school, and going into your quest. And so Mercury can see into that world. Mercury, while we often talk about it in a third dimensional way, Mercury is also the psychopomp who can see into the soul realms. And so this is like seeing what your soul's purpose is in your dharma and having a vision of, aha, that's where I want to go. I can do this. This is possible. That's what I see.
I like that. Spins it positive. And then March 30th, rounding out towards the end of the month, we have Mars trining Saturn. That's a nice harmonious aspect. And Venus is conjunct Uranus. And I always like these two together. It's a good time party as far as I'm concerned. Venus is passion and love and values, and Uranus is anything goes. And when you put that together, that's a happy cocktail as far as I'm concerned. But potential is for some disruption in some passionate or romantic ordeals, but I'm going to spin that one positive too and let that be harmonious. And Mars trining Saturn.
Or buying a retreat center or a house.
Or buying a retreat center or a house.
And then we have Mercury into Taurus on April 3rd, squaring Pluto. Good luck. And then the Libra full moon on April 5th.
That's the last of the changing planets into a sign. Mercury changed twice. So Mercury will then move into Taurus, which can be about grounding down and being a little stubborn. So remember, all the way to the end, the theme is flow with the changes or be changed by the flow, and allow yourself to move into sweet Taurus energy, not stubborn Taurus energy with your communication. And then squaring Pluto, like, don't fight your soul's purpose. Just step into it. There's no need to resist it. It's what you're here to do. And then the Libra full moon will talk to us about balance and relationships, all on April 5th. Don't know where we'll be then.
By the water. I don't know.
Hopefully by the water. I know. We come out to Washington often 2-3 times a year is our goal, because this is someday a place that we'd like to bring our retreat center to. So we're manifesting. Help us manifest. Hold that in your hearts for us, if you would, please. All right. Till next time. Namaste.